let's focus now on the impact it may have on our national security and our intelligence agencies.
The CIA sent a buyout offer to their entire workforce. I guess that's a wrap on the CIA. Let us now bid a fond farewell to some of their finest work.
Not all of the CIA's information has remained redacted, though, because CNN has learned that in order to comply with the president's executive order to shrink the federal workforce, the spy agency has sent the White House an unclassified email listing the names of all employees hired over the last 2 years. This does raise serious concerns about whether foreign adversaries could access the list and identify those employees. One former agency officer told my next guest, David Sanger of the New York Times, that the unclassified reporting of the names was a, quote, counterintelligence disaster. Democrats criticizing the move.
Apparently, some list, according to public reports, of officers at the CIA was sent to the White House in an unclassified email. Now, I remember a time, it seems very quaint, Donald Trump was always talking about Hillary's emails. What about this email?
Joining us now, New York Times White House national security correspondent David Sanger, who's of course also a CNN's political national security analyst. David, good morning. How big of a screw up is this?
Good morning, Casey. Well, Casey, when we wrote about this yesterday, my colleague Julian Barnes and I were quite surprised to have heard about what had transpired. To their defense, and it's a pretty thin one, the unclassified email had the first names and the first initial of the last name of the agents and operatives and analysts involved. So the White House made the case, and others, that this did not actually, reveal their full identities. It sure gave some clues that would be pretty useful combined with other information from social media and et cetera. And we know that the Chinese and the Russians are particularly adept at combining all source intelligence to put these together. I guess the question that I would ask, Casey, would be, supposing we had published in the New York Times or you had published on CNN.com a list of names and first initials of the last name of people hired by intelligence agencies in the past 2 years, what do we think the White House would have been saying?
David,
and of course, we wouldn't have done that, right?
Right, we would never have done that. But can I just ask, sort of on a basic level, can we assume that this is being read by foreign adversaries, that this has been hacked?
I don't know for sure, but we do know in this particular case. But what do we know? We know that during the Obama administration, that the Russians were in the unclassified White House, State Department, and Pentagon systems. We know that the Chinese, through a group called Salt Typhoon that you and I have talked about before, got deeply into the telephone networks of 9 major telecom providers and got at the information about how the Justice Department basically taps into the phones of suspected spies, drug dealers, so forth, when they have warrants. So their skills here are pretty good, and particularly for getting into unclassified systems.
And very briefly, David, the lengths to which the CIA would normally go not to reveal the actual first name and last initial of, let's stick with the Directorate of Operations, the more kind of sensitive players here. Normally, how far would they go to make sure? I mean, normally these people operate in the world often under names that are not their actual first names, right?
That's right, and frequently they operate as well under a sort of official cover. That they've got a job and a title at the State Department, at the Agency for International Development, perhaps at the Agriculture Department. They could be placed in other roles. So it's very possible that the data could be cross-registered here. And remember, what did the Chinese steal back during the Obama years? They went into the Office of Personnel Management's database and got all kinds of data about U.S. Officials who had security clearances. They did not at that time get into the intelligence agency list because the intelligence agencies kept them separate from what's in the Office of Personnel Management. But this is obviously the kind of information foreign groups all look for.
All right, David Sanger, thank you very much for being on the program, sir. Always appreciate you.